It's interesting to me how God orchestrates a service, because the atmosphere, the feeling in here is one of intimacy. It's that closeness that God wants to be up close and personal with us. And that is kind of the emphasis of where this is going this morning. For those of you that are going to be listening to this by series later, this message is going to go in front of a little different series that we're doing in the next 2 Sundays, Palm Sunday and Resurrection Sunday. This message will be in front because the thought of what's happening, what we're going to be talking about on Palm Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, is in this message this morning. So if you're listening to this later, yes, this message comes first, and then it goes into what we're dealing with next week. And we're talking about agape love. That's been the subject, that's been the theme. Agape love is God's kind of love. There's all kinds of love in this world. I think there's 17 or 18 different kinds of love in Scripture, which are shown in, I have them listed out in this booklet, and we have like 3 of those left. If you didn't get one, you won't need it much this morning. In the next 2 Sundays, you won't need it at all. But there's all kinds of love. There's only one that's God kind, and it's described in 2 words, agapeo and agape. And that's what we've been talking about. Last week, empathy was emphasized. Anybody remember what empathy is? Putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Feeling what they're going through, understanding what they're going through, or trying to understand what they're going through, putting yourself in their spot and how things are happening and how would it affect you if you were in their spot. That is absolutely necessary for agape love, because agape love prefers the other person. That's scripture. It's in your book, but I can show it to you at some point. Agape love prefers the other. To prefer someone, you have to get into their mindset, what they're thinking, where they're coming from. So we emphasized that last Sunday, and we gave you a homework assignment. Anybody remember what it was? No. That's funny. Why? Get to know somebody, invite them to lunch, get together with them for coffee, whatever. Why? Because you're trying to show empathy, and part of loving someone is to actually be interested. There's the word I'm looking for. You're actually interested in them. Why? Because they have value. They have value. So they deserve to be interested. They deserve to get some interest about them. We ended with talking about the scriptures and the concept of hate scripturally, because they're contrasted, and I'm going to show you a scripture again this morning on it. It's in this handout, and it's Occidental scriptural hate. If you've been here, you know what that means. I'm not going to go over it line by line. But what it's basically saying is when the Bible uses the word hate, specifically that one, and that's used most of the time, it's a range from dislike all the way over to disgust or loathing someone. It's like a range of 1 to 10. And the point that Thayer's Greek lexicon makes is we tend to lie to each other. We tend to lie to ourselves, which kind of goes along with what Dave was talking about during the prayer time. In that we feel we don't hate anybody because we're Christians. I don't hate anybody. We just don't have interest in certain people and don't care to have any interest in them. As Europeans, it's much more easy to just kind of have a very cool response to someone, and it's kind of our culture, and that's pointed out, and in Thayer's it calls us Occidentals, which is a word for the European cultures. And Europeans tend not to flat out tell someone they hate them. They just ignore them, avoid them, and aren't interested in them. Scripturally, that is number one in that whole, that's the lower range of that whole thing of hate. Where the Oriental cultures are more, and that's in that definition, it's on your sheet, they're more open about it, and if they don't like you, they'll tell you. They'll probably tell you why. The point is this: not caring about someone else because you don't like their personality, you don't like how they do things, you just don't want to be interested in their life because they grind on you a little bit, or whatever the situation is, that's hate in God's opinion. Because agape love is interested in everybody, even if they grind on us. Even if we don't agree with them. There's days God doesn't agree with you. I know that might be news to some of us, but there's days we do things that I'm sure grind on God. There's plenty of stories in the Old Testament that show God just gets like, man, oh man, what in the world? But he loves us. And he's still interested in us, and he still wants the best for us, and will do everything he can to get it to us. When we're not, how would you say, imitating that or following that, we're not loving like God loves. And the average person in America, what we call love, is what the scripture, the Greek word is phileo love. It's something that always gives something to us. We like to hang around with people because we get along with them. See, it's about us. We like to give gifts because they'll give them back. That's about us. We like to do things with people who are interested in what we're interested in. It's about us. It always somehow, it's like a boomerang. We send it out there and it comes back. Those are the people we love and build relationship with and get close to. When we send the boomerang out there and nothing comes back, or it comes back and hits us in the back of the head, those are the people we avoid. We don't have them in our life. Scripture calls that hate. And that's the word here. So it's going to play in on what we're talking about this morning. So what we're going to look at, if you've got your Bibles, they will come up on the screen, but if you've got your Bibles, it's going to be, we're coming out of John 15. And as a result here, my iPad's fussing with me. But I think I got it to obey. I want you to see something where now you got to put, for this message, you got to put your thinking cap on. If you're half asleep, get up and stand at the back or eat some candy or something, because I'm going to lose you. This one is not the floating the boat on top of the lake. This one kind of goes in and looks at some things. And we're going to see it out of John 15. So if you could bring that up, and if you give me control of it on my device here, I will be able to walk through the screens. Otherwise, you'll have to walk through them for me. John 15, verse number 1. There it is. All right. It's not on my device, so I don't know what's happened, but it's not here. Nope, we need to go to John 15. We already went over that. I did it really quickly, so you need to jump down. There we go. Thank you. I am the true vine. My Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. So he's comparing us to trees and how he gets us more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Verse number 4. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. So if you haven't seen anything at this point, see this. he's starting out with how do we bear fruit? How do we take from him and see these things reproduced in our life and through our life? Which is another way of saying how can we get the glory to manifest in our life and through us, the power and the presence of God. Okay, so that's his thought. Verse number 6. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. So here's the thought here. Obviously, he's still on the fruit thing, and he still wants us bearing fruit. But the thing that he is after to make that happen is he wants us to abide in him. Now, he's going to develop on that, and he's going to develop on it differently than you've probably been taught. Because many times we have been taught that abiding means we just need to read the Bible more. And that's part of it, but that's not all of it. Not in this section of Scripture. You can read the Bible all day long and not be abiding in what he's going to get into here. And so now it came up for me. So hopefully I can take this through. Let's see if it works. Number 9. Did it switch? Okay, I can't see it back there. All right, I see it now. As the Father loved, that's the word agapeo. So he's been talking about bearing fruit. Without me, you can't do a thing. And you need to abide in me to do this. Now he's going into love. Oh. Well, that's interesting. He hasn't changed subjects yet. This is still the same subject. As the Father loved me, agapeo, that is what now? That's the mindset. That's the attitude of love. I also have had the mindset of love, loved you, agapeo. So abide in that. Oh, I thought abide meant just to be reading the word all the time. No. Abide means get into love. Amen. That's good. There it said it. I mean, really bluntly, it said it. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my agape. See, now agape is the action word. You've got the mindset, the attitude of love, that's what's in our heart, and then agape is taking that mindset, putting it into action. So whenever agape shows up in the scripture, there has to be an action that it's tied to. Look there. If you keep my commandments, there's the action. You will abide in my love, agape. Agape is the same thing as agapeo. It's just the action side of it. So we have to not just have the mindset of the attitude of love. We have to have the action that supports it. If you keep my commandments, you will abide. Second time he told us what abide means. You will abide in my love, agape. So you say, well, how do I abide in God's love? Do what he tells you to do. If you go to 1 John, he describes it this way. He says, love is obedience. It's to obey. Okay? If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my agape, the action love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his action love, agape. These things I've spoken to you, that my joy might remain in you and that your joy may be full. Okay, so there's a couple of points here I want you to see. Agapeo, verse 9. The Father loved me, I've also loved you. Abide in that kind of love. The mindset, the attitude of just, and to reduce it down so we don't have to go through the whole big long definition, just wanting the best for everybody. Wanting to see him succeed, wanting to see him prosper, wanting to see him in heaven, wanting to see him have a relationship with God, wanting to see him get over whatever the issues are they're facing. That's agapeo. We just want the best for everybody. That can be for the whole world. Agape is limited. You say, how is agape limited? To have agape, the action, to have that flow, you have to have some form of relationship with the person. I can't show love in an agape fashion, other than I can pray for them, but that, it's okay. But I can't physically show love for President Biden this morning in an agape fashion. I have no relationship with the man. I can't do it. Agape is taking my mindset and putting it into gear and doing something for him. I can't do anything for him. I can pray for him, but I can't do anything for him in a physical sense. So agape love, God expressed to the world his creation when he died for him. However, and that's a given. That was action. He died for him, and the scripture says when he died for us, he loved us, which the word there is agape. However, for that love to become active between God and I, he died for me. In that while I was yet a sinner, he died for me. But for agape to develop, so he can do things for me in my life and I can do things for him, that will be dependent on my response to what he did. That's going to be dependent on my building a relationship with him. He can't do much for anybody who has no relationship. He wants to because he's got the mindset of love. I want to bless them, God says. But a sinner or someone who's in rebellion, are they walking in the blessings of God? Probably not. Why? Because God doesn't want to? No, God wants to. That's agapeo. There's no relationship for this thing to flow through so he can do it. So there's a difference. Catch that, please. That showed up here, and we're going to see it again. You say, well, what's the relationship? What brings us into that relationship? Well, obviously, you make him your Savior. That's what opens the door. But you know what makes the relationship that God starts doing things in us and we start doing things for his kingdom? Obedience. Obedience. He told us. Verse number 10. If you keep my commandments, obedience. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in agape. But yet God agapeos, or loves the whole world. But to abide in that love, you have to do something. And it's tied to the word obey. So to build relationship with God, you're going to have to obey him. You don't look too excited right now. Just follow me. It gets better. It's that obedient relationship, that flow that starts to begin to develop that produces verse 11, joy. These things I have spoken to you. What did he just say? I love you. I want you to be in my active love, my agape, but you're going to have to obey me for that to happen, to abide in that. I've spoken those things to you that your joy that my joy might remain in you and that your joy might be full. The fullness of joy comes from relationship with God, which is built on obedience. Amen. That's not me, that's the word. Yes. Okay? So catch that part. Now let's move on. Verse number 12. This is my commandment, that you, agapeo, there's the mindset, one another, as I have the mindset of love, agapeo, for you. Greater love, agape. Oh. And I wrote in the agapeo part, so it'd be clear. Greater agape has no one than this, than to lay down his life for his friends, philos. Now it's going to be interesting here, so keep your thinking caps on because now you're going to need them. You are my philos if you do whatever I command you. Say philos, that's a new word. You haven't described that one to us yet. Yes, I'm going to right now. So look at it with me. My command is we're supposed to have the mindset and the attitude of love for everybody. Just like God does for everybody. Agape, greater love, agape. Oh, there's going to be action. Someplace there's action tied here because he switched from the mindset to the action word. Agape. Greater love has no one than this. Oh, there's the action. Than to lay his life down for his friends. For you to do that takes more than just the mindset of love. Oh, I love you. For you to actually get in and lay your life down takes action. That's called agape. Friends is an interesting word there. It's philos. It's the root word to guess what word? What does it sound like? Phileo. It's the word we get phileo from in the Greek. It's the root word to it. Phileo is, now remember I told you early on, so now I'm gonna go full circle here. I told you early on, God uses the word phileo. He uses that kind of love, but it has to be built on agape to work. Otherwise, it turns selfish and very worldly. And he's going to show us that all here in John 15. Phileo is when you're fond of someone, you like someone, you have a relationship with them, they like you, you're fond of. It's normally what we think of as, do you love somebody? Yeah, they care about me, I care about them. That's all phileo description. We have good times together. You know, they bought me this, and then a few weeks later, then I bought them something, and this. And it's just a wonderful, loving relationship. Yes, that's all phileo. And there's nothing wrong with it if it's built on agape. If it stands alone, it turns selfish and worldly. So let's have him describe that to us, because this is one of the chapters that comes out of. So what he's saying there in verse 13 is greater action love. You can't have greater action love than this. Laying down your life for your friends. Your phileo friends. Now I'm going to emphasize that by saying they're the friends you have who you're built on agape. And I'll show you that here in a second. You say, how do you know that's what that means? Read the last verse. You are my philos friends if you do whatever I command. Where did we hear that just a few minutes ago? That's the description of agape. Obedience. So he's saying we can come into this intimate relationship as what you and I would call friends. If it's built on agape, if you do what I command you to. Are you following that? This is important. If you miss this, then other things won't make sense. Greater love has no man than this, than to lay his life down for his friends. See, now, he's giving us a break there compared to what he did. He laid his life down for us when we were still sinners. We weren't his friends. He laid his life down for everybody, even his enemies. Here he's given us a little bit of a break in this scripture. I've heard this preached. Well, as a Christian, you have to lay your life down for everybody. That is not true. You're wondering where it's going. Well, I'm going where it says there. You lay your life down for the phileo relationships you have that are built on agape. And we're going to describe that in a bit. But what you're doing is when you have like-minded people who are in covenant with God, obeying God, serving God, and you develop what we call a friendship with them. You like them, they like you, you work together. Some days you grind on each other, but because of agape love, you hang with each other. Yeah. See, it's the foundation. And you learn to communicate and get over your differences. Not because of phileo, because of agape, the foundation. Because God commanded us to do that. Well, I don't feel like it. Well, get out of phileo love and what you feel and drop back down to what he said. Make the choice. Do this right. And you've got those kind of people who you're working that kind of relationship in your life. Those are the ones you lay your life down for. Joe Blow down the street who you don't know, you don't have to lay your life down for unless God specifically lays his finger on you and says, do it for them. But scripturally, you're not obligated. They will all know that you are my disciples in your, right there, love for each other. That relationship. You've got people who are in covenant with God. And, I mean, they're doing what God wants them to do, and they're trying to obey, and they're trying to grow and live in God. That's agape right down here. And phileo comes on top of that, and you build a loving relationship on top of agape. Those people, no greater love than you lay it down for those people. That's the greatest. This is not the worldly phileo. He's going to touch that here in a bit. So correct phileo love, or those kind of friends, philos, friends, is built on obedience to God. Both parts. It's built on obedience to God. This friendship, which is built on phileo love, because it stands on agape, a phileo, which can turn very selfish without agape, but because it is built on agape, doing what God is telling us to do, this kind of phileo love, we are loving the person not because what we get back from them, but what we can pour into them. And they have the same attitude toward us. And it builds a wonderful relationship. It is what every husband and wife has to have if you're going to have a good marriage. Amen. You have to have this combination because you're going to lay your life down for each other. More ways than one. So in this scenario, the closeness, the intimacy, the feelings, the having good times together, enjoying each other, those are the kind of people you lay your life down for. You say, what about the ones that are not like that? You have to love them anyway. And when you get a chance, you express it in whatever way you can. In a simple thing like, now most doors going into stores are automatic, but not all. And you're going up to the door and there's someone coming behind you, stop and hold the door open for them. I want the best for you. To the point I don't even want you to open this door for yourself. I'm going to do it for you. That's agape love. You say, I don't know the person. Good. You're loving them. You're doing what God asks us to do. Obedience, doing what God wants us to do, comes from agape. And I'm going to go back to the verse and show it to you. And I want to make sure you see this. Verse 9 and 10. The Father loved me. That's the mindset. I've loved you. That's the mindset. So abide in that mindset. That's how you live. Say, why should I? Because that's how you get the first part of the chapter active in your life. That God is actually working in you and through you. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my agape. Just as I have kept my Father's commandments and I abide in his agape. So the obedience that he even mentions in verse 13 and 14 about the friendship relationships, the obedience comes from agape love. Don't miss that. Now, verse number 15. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I've called you friends. There it is again. For all things that I heard of my Father, I've made known to you. So one of the characteristics of having a phileo relationship built on agape is intimacy. You share things with them you would not share with other people. Jesus did not share everything he heard from the Father with everybody. He shared it with them. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit. Oh, now we're back to the subject at the beginning of the chapter. This whole love thing and how this love thing builds is the abiding necessary to produce fruit. So now, 2 and 2. The reason Christians don't bear fruit the way we should is we don't love the way we should. That's why we're studying this, to try to get a handle on it. And that your fruit should remain. Oh, here it is. Here's the one that I get asked so many times. That whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. That's fruit in Jesus' opinion. That's the goal. To actually learn to live in this love thing, agapeo, agape being the foundation, and then the phileo building on top of that, to actually learn how to abide in this agape love so deeply for each other that we get to the point that whatever we ask, he does. See, some people have said, well, I got to read the word more so that, because I'm asking and nothing's happening. No, you might have to do the word more. You might already know what you need to do. You might not be doing it, and that's hindering you getting your answers and the power of God flowing through you. Verse 17. These things I command you, that you agapeo one another. See, it begins with that foundation of agapeo, the mindset. That mindset is willing to be obedient to and submit to whatever God asks. That produces fruit. The goal is to produce the kind of fruit that we get more of what we ask than what we don't get. We actually cross the 50% line. You ever thought of it that way? Out of 10 things you ask and believe for, do you get 5 of them? Once we cross 50%, we've learned some things. Now, he wants us to get everything we ask for. But it's built on abiding in him. Without him, we can't do anything, beginning of the chapter. To abide, we have to abide in agapeo, agape love. That's for him, that's for you, that's for me, and each other. Now, he switches gears here in verse number 18. Just throws in a different thought. He's still on the same subject, but he throws in a different thought. If the world hates you, there is that word again, the one we gave you in the handout on the Occidentals. That's that word. If the world hates you, what in the world did he switch over to hate for? He was having such a good role there on love. And he just switches. If the world hates you, that can be a mild disinterest, disregard for you, all the way over to antagonism. They like you dead. That spectrum. If the world hates you, you know that it hated, same word, me before it hated you. Now notice this. If you were of the world would phileo you. There is worldly love. It's phileo, not built on the foundation of agape. It goes selfish, it goes corrupt, it goes very exclusive. I don't care about a lot of people, I care about the ones I have relationship with. That's because it's not built on agape, which makes it have interest in the whole world and engage with as many as the Holy Spirit leads them to engage with, or as many as we can. If you were of the world, The world would accept you and love you and pat you on the back and want to spend time with you. They would want to be your best friend. They'd want to be in your back pocket. They'd phileo you because there'd be an exchange going. They would love you and you would love them back, and they would get drunk and you'd get drunk with them. And they'd go out and steal something and you'd drive the car for them. And, there's this thing going. It's good. Yet, because you're not of the world. Why are we not of the world? Because we're in agape love, we have to obey him. I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. As believers, there are those who will hate us, from mild disgust and disinterest and just kind of giving us the cold shoulder, all the way over to wishing you were dead. That's all in that word Messiah, hate. In this world, people will hate believers. Why? A lot of times they don't even know why. They just don't like you. What does it go by? How much of this world is in them? Now, this can be, we're thinking non-believers probably. This can be believers too. Depending upon how carnal they are. That's what Paul used in the King James Version. Depending upon how, that's the word he used, how carnal or fleshly or worldly we are as believers, we will love the same way the world loves. Like spirits, I get along with them. That's why I love them. Like spirits. Well, you can do that in the world. You just do what they do. You just be part of what they want. Like spirit with them, man, you're buds. Back out of that like spirit and start obeying him, they sense that. All of a sudden, there's a sense of there's not a like spirit in you and me. And the worldly spirit in that person will despise the spirit they're feeling, either mildly or majorly. That can be believers or unbelievers, depending upon how carnal we are. Mary mentioned to me just a few weeks back, she said, I'd swear if I walk into the room, some people would hate me just because I'm there. Bingo, that's what he's saying. You don't even need to talk to him. You walk, our first impressions many times is not talking to him. You see somebody walk by and it's like, I don't like them. Why? That's not the love of God. So there must be some carnality in us, or we wouldn't have that reaction. Don't shut me down. The greatest love is to lay your life down for your friends. Phileo, the philos relationships. That's the one built on agape. Now, I want to talk about this laying life down because this is the jump-off point for the next 2 Sundays. I'm going to talk about this briefly, and then we've got a video we want to show. And then we're going to have communion. Verse 13 and 14. So let me back up to that. Verse 13 and 14. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command. Agape love, the action, which is first obvious between us and God, and then it goes to people, will cause a person to deny themselves and lay down their life. That word life is not Zoe. It's not the God life that God has given to us, eternal life. It's Suki life. It's the mind, mental, brain, thinking life we have. Our desires, our will, our emotions, our dreams, our goals. No greater love than someone to lay down what he wants for his friends. How do we lay our life down on a daily basis has to do with what he is asking or commanding of us, not with what we want. If it's based on what we want, that's worldly love. If it's based on agape, I am doing this because he's asked me to, and I love him, and I will obey him and follow and do what he asked me to. That's the distinguishing factor between our relationship and the world relationship. The world love of phileo is all about myself, what I want. Once you're in an intimate, feeling, emotional relationship with God that's built on agape, it's about what he wants. Agape makes that happen. That's the distinguishing factor. So let me give you some examples of daily dying, because if you don't put it to shoe leather, people don't understand. It's like, well, it's a good thought, but I don't see it yet. So let me help you see it, and I'm going to make some people uncomfortable now to help you see this. What would cause someone to give up a chunk of their Saturday, every Saturday, for years, no end in sight, to come and clean the church without a salary or a wage? This is voluntary. What would cause someone to do that? It's not phileo love for me as a friend. If I'd say, hey, Don, we need the church cleaned. Every Saturday, half your day is going to be gone. For how long? Forever. He would probably say, I'll do it a few Saturdays. But you don't mean that much to me that I'm going to give up that much forever. Right? That's probably what he'd say. It's what most of us would say. What causes someone to do that? Well, there is relationship, but there's a foundation of God asked me to. Agape. Yeah, I've got this relationship with you as a friend, but the real motivator here is not your friendship and you patting me on the back and going, good job, I'm so glad. Every week I tell them, because I don't want to lose them. They're cleaning the church. If they don't, I have to. Oh, you do such a wonderful job of cleaning the church, blah, 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 blah. No, it's built on agape. What's agape? I love you. Tell me what to do. I'm here for you. That's the only thing that will motivate that. And then the realization of, see if it comes up here. This verse. Paul says, I die daily, verse 31. Verse 33, he says, don't be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Good habits would be dying daily. Verse 34, wake up to what's righteousness and not sin. In other words, learn how to die daily. For some do not have the knowledge of God. Oh, there's a huge motivator. Because God, agape love, is all about the lost. And when we shift in with his love as our motivator, part of the reason you show up every Saturday to clean the church is because someone may come tomorrow who needs a Savior. And we're going to have this building ready for them. What would cause two people, won't say any names, to be in the sound booth every Sunday? Every time something needs to be filmed or a wedding needs to be or a funeral needs to be, most of the time, two people are in that sound booth. Sometimes we get a helper. Every Sunday, every Sunday, every Sunday, every Sunday for years. What would motivate a person to do that without salary or without getting a wage? No pay. There's only one thing. I felt in my heart, agape love, God asked me to. I'm not doing it for you, Pastor. I like our relationship. That's up here. I am committed to this because of God. I will obey him because I love him. And the desire to have things ready for someone to get saved, because that's always God's heart. What would cause a person to be in the children's department for decades? Every Sunday, mostly the nursery. For right now, it's between 25 and 30 years they've done that for Word of Life. Or at Word of Life, not for Word of Life, at Word of Life. What would cause, they have to be nuts. That's the average person's thinking. Well, I'll do it for maybe a Sunday a month. Every Sunday for 25 years? I'm finding a different church. I ain't doing that. What would cause that? God asked them to. It's not the phileo by itself. Oh, we're such good friends, and they love Pastor Mary and I so much, they just want to do it. That, they'd have been gone years ago. It's God asked me to do this, and I will obey him. And out of that grows a relationship. See the difference? What causes someone who runs the TV end of this, the live streaming, the editing, the whole thing, to do this now for almost 10 years, and on an average it's 7 to 10 hours a week? What would cause a person to do that every week? What would cause a person, or people in this case, to show up at 7:30 every morning here? They're here by 7:30 to get your coffee and your breakfast ready. Every Sunday. You're still in bed, deciding if you want to go to church. They're already here serving you. Oh, they're just so committed to you, Pastor. No, that's really not it. It's the love. This is what I feel he's asking me to do. And I will lay down my life. You think they want to be here every Sunday morning at 7:30? You think they want to be sitting in that sound booth all the time away from their spouses? You think they want to be on the other side taking care of children all the time? They will lay down their Suki life, their will, their desires, this is what I wanted to do for you. Because of him. He's first. He asked me to. I will do it, and I will be obedient. And then the relationships build on top of that. We have a video here. It's going to be 3 short segments. It's 14 minutes about the whole thing. Where Jordan Peterson, who used to be an atheist, he's a behavioral psychologist, who used to be an atheist, now has finally crossed over and has become a believer, addresses some of the things we're talking about. And I had one of my children send this to me a while back, and I was waiting for the spot to put it in, and this is it, I think. Because he gives his views from a former atheist and a behavioral psychologist. In other words, he watches how people live and how they behave. He gives his views of believing God, loving God, the church. Our actions, this is a big one, our actions as believers. And he addresses the evil and the lack of love in our hearts. Has a very interesting perspective, and it's not a religious perspective. It's a totally different perspective on what we're talking about. Because what we're talking about is the kingdom principle that builds not only churches, it builds marriages, it builds families, it builds nations, it will build everything in this world, learning how to love. So run that for us. Let's see what he's got to say here. And there'll be a couple breaks because it's 3 portions.
The question. People have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists. That's... The traditions bind the community together. Now, I'm saying that, and I don't go to church, and the reason I don't go to church is because, well, it drives me crazy, to speak frankly. I haven't been able to sit in a situation like that ever since I was, well, ever, really. That's really the truth of it, ever. I'm not convinced that that's a good thing, because I do believe, and I've had good conversations about this with Jonathan Pageau, I do believe that communal return to the source of the community's ethics is actually a necessary thing. And maybe I'm atoning for my past sins by doing these biblical lectures at the moment, which is something that's communal. And then, because there's also something about going where a bunch of other people are to reaffirm your commitment to the good that you're all aiming at, that's got some power in it. And I don't think that that's something that we should forego. I think it's dangerous. I mean, look, even if you're cynical about church, and I guess I would put myself in that category, it's certainly the case that communal church going in the 1950s, say, provided the average person with at least an hour a week where they were contemplating, no matter how poorly, the purpose of ethics in life and the idea of a higher purpose and a higher meaning in life. And you got to think that spending an hour a week thinking about that is better than never doing it at all. I don't know how that tradition can be revivified in a meaningful way, but I really do think it's a catastrophe that we've lost it, because we don't have a center, an ethical center that holds our community together, and the consequence of that is that we're fragmenting quite badly. But what you see there is if you view someone with love, then it's incumbent upon you to treat them as if they're valuable. And then the more you treat other people as if they're valuable, the better person you are. That just comes along for the ride in some sense. So none of that seems questionable to me. That seems solid. And so then maybe the more love you view other people with, the higher the moral demand that's placed on you. And then I would say too, well then, that's another reason why it's so important to be truthful and in some sense to be good, because it isn't obvious to me that you can withstand that moral load if you're compromised by too much sin. It's too much. And that's another thing that we're not very good at teaching young people about. We shouldn't do that. It's like there's a sanctimonious authority that goes along with that that's the wrong tone. It's more like, I don't know how you lay it out properly, but you tell people that you love how to avoid the road to hell. And you don't do that because you're shaking your finger at them or because you're a moral authority. You do it because you don't want them to burn. And I think there's too much of the moral authority still in the church and not enough of the love that helps people avoid the fire. I'm not an atheist anymore because I don't look at the world that way anymore. I'm not a materialist anymore. I don't think the world's made out of matter. I think it's made out of what matters. It's made out of meaning. What we orient towards unconsciously, which means what captures our attention, is meaning, and it captures our attention before we know what it is. The brain acts as if the world's made out of information or made out of meaning. Who would have the audacity to claim that they believed in God if they examined the way they lived? Who would dare say that? To believe, you think, to believe in a Christian sense, to actually, this is why Nietzsche said there was only ever one Christian, and that was Christ. To have the audacity to claim that means that you live it out fully. And that's an that's an unbearable task in some sense. To be able to accept the structure of existence, the suffering that goes along with it, and the disappointment and the betrayal, and to nonetheless act properly, right? To aim at the good with all your heart, right? To dispense with the malevolence and your desire for destruction and revenge and all of that, and to face things courageously and to tell the truth, to speak the truth and to act it out. That's what it means to believe. That's what it means. It doesn't mean to state it. It means to act it out. And unless you act it out, you should be very careful about claiming it. And so I've never been comfortable saying anything other than I try to act as if God exists, because God only knows what you'd be if you truly believed. I mean, if you think about it in some sense, that's the central idea in Christianity, is that if you were capable of believing, it would be a transfiguring event, a truly transfiguring event. And I know people experience that to one degree or another, but we have no idea what the limit of that is. And we have no idea what the possibility is within each person if they lived a life that was maximally courageous and maximally truthful. You know, because maybe you're running at 60% or 70% or 20% and at cross purposes to yourself. God only knows what you'd be if you believed. And so, well, I try to act like I believe, but I'd never claim that I manage it. God, lift from me the intolerable burden of my ignorance, arrogance, willful blindness, bitterness, and resentment. As I pray that others rise above the same faults and temptations. I watched Fox News release a message this week. There are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you and coming for us. And then I watched the Democrats respond in panic and anger, saying, there are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you, coming for us. Are there terrible things afoot, bubbling under the surface? Is something coming for you and for us? Ask yourself how true that is of yourself and your own life. Have you addressed all that? Are you concerning yourself with the dust in your enemy's eyes instead of attending to the filth that obscures your own sight? Do we want accusation, suspicion, discord, derision, and hatred? Or the peace and prosperity and happiness that beckons to us at this moment like never before? Who's the enemy here? Is it the basket of deplorables? Is it the freaks and the queers? Is it the plumbers and carpenters and tradesmen and managers who work honestly and diligently during the day, and the soldiers who stalwartly defend the borders and protect us? Is it the artists and visionaries whose expressions of unbridled creativity entertain and rejuvenate us, and who continually offer to us an unending panoply of technological miracle? Is it the institutions that guide and protect us, that so many lived and died to erect and establish, which for all their faults have served us so well? Do we want revenge or justice? Do we want contempt or mercy? Do we want war or peace? And what are you aiming at in your heart of hearts? I see even the best of men degenerating into the exchange of blows. I see even the best of men identifying the enemy in our neighbors and friends. I see even the best of men falling prey to cowardice and self-righteous anger. It needs to stop. I need to stop. You need to stop before it's too late. Who is the enemy here? The snake in your heart? The lies on your tongue? The arrogance of your intellect? The cowardice of our refusal to see? The enemy is that which divides to sow discord. The enemy is the pride and the fear that stops us from lending a hand across the divide. The enemy is the great and eternal adversary of mankind. And if we demonize our brothers, our comrades in arms, do we not precisely call that dread spirit forth? Have we not yet learned? Courage, trust, truth, love, even unto your enemy, which is yourself. God, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. May what is highest guide our vision. May what is highest open our ears. May what is highest guide our tongues. And may we pray, fearful of the hell we could so easily and carelessly create. Deliver us from evil. Shine a light into the corners of our dark hearts. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
What causes a father to get up and go to work 5-6 days a week to a job he might not even like for the best years of his life? What causes a mother to do the dishes, wash the clothes, fix the beds, vacuum the carpet, stay up half the night with somebody who's sick? Well, they have such a wonderful relationship with their children and their family. That's why they do that. No. The reason they do that, if they're going to do it right, is they have a relationship with God. Agape. That says, this is what I need to do to please Him. Many of us are dying daily for our covenant partner, God, and dying daily to serve those who are in covenant with Him and us in serving God. No greater love is anyone than this, than to lay down your life for your friends. To not do what you want to do for the best of somebody else. Agape, agapeo. That is the heart of communion. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till He comes. We just described it. He laid it all down for us. We're supposed to be reminded when we take these emblems. Now He's wanting us to do it for each other and them. Going into Palm Sunday and Resurrection Sunday, we have to remember something, because Romans 6 talks about it very directly, and I'm going to jump off of Romans 6 the beginning of next week. If we really want to live, we have to die first. That's what Romans 6 says. To have a new life, we first have to die to the old one. True fulfillment and joy, purpose, meaning The reason is found in the death process, because as we are buried with him, we will resurrect to a new life. Romans 6, picture of water baptism, which is the picture of our life. Agape love is the foundation that everything else builds on. Didn't he do a good job? That's really an awesome perspective. He doesn't even want to call himself a believer. He doesn't like the question because he doesn't feel he acts worthy of that name. Well, if we're going by legalism and the law, that's probably true. None of us are really believers because we're all full of ourselves. But by grace, we are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. Amen. He will discover that. But I love his point, because there's so many people who name themselves Christians who I wish they kept their mouth shut, because how they live is damaging our cause. Yes, amen. That point was made very well. So we're going to take communion this morning and remind ourselves. So let me briefly explain the way we do this. The only qualification is you know Jesus as your Savior. If you don't, we can fix that right now. That's because this is, you're not going to die and go to hell if you take communion and you don't know Jesus as your Savior. It just does nothing for you. And God always wants to do something for us. In 1 Corinthians 11, it says, the same night the Lord was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it after giving thanks and said, take and eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. Then after supper, he took the cup in the same way, same manner, and said, this is the new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink it, you do it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat the bread and drink the cup, you show the Lord's death till he comes. These are symbols. This is not the real thing. These are symbols. These are to remind us. As often as you eat the bread, do this in remembrance of me. As often as you drink the cup, do it in remembrance of me. For as often as you do both, you're showing the Lord's death. Well, what are we supposed to be remembering to show? Well, one aspect of it we just talked about. We have to learn how to love. What little bit we know, pretty much I can say it for all of us, I think, we can improve on it. We can improve on it. We can grow in this thing. And with that comes so many benefits and blessings. But to grow in this, when Jesus came in, this signifies his body. As often as you eat this bread, this signifies his body. He was given a body for one reason, to live among us and die as a human being as a sacrifice for us. His blood, which the scripture says the life is in the blood, his blood was not spilt, it was given, it was shed. He did it on purpose. It wasn't an accident. He did it on purpose to establish a covenant between God and mankind. Without dying, that covenant would have never happened. That's the picture of Romans 6. Without us dying to our old nature, King James calls it flesh, those desires that are contrary to him. We don't have to physically die. He did that for us. But if we want the new life he's offering us, we have to die to our way of doing life. It has to become his way. So if we really want to live, which that's what this season is about, celebrating what Jesus did and giving us new life. And he did. But the only people who get the new life are the ones who are willing to die to the old one. You can be saved and going to heaven and not willing to die to the old one and struggling in your life. Where if you just give it up and let him be more than just your Savior. Let him be your Lord. You'd go through a little painful time of him ripping the stuff out of you that doesn't belong there, but then out of that would grow a whole new future. That's what we're remembering. So, Lord, as we take this communion and even the season we're in, remind us this whole thing is about learning how to love. Loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. This whole thing is about love. And out of that relationship, as it grows, our life grows better and better and better. Wherever we're off, we're open to you correcting me. Us. Wherever we're off, we're open to you correcting us. Wherever we're off, we're open to you correcting us. Got most of you, but I'm not going to quit until you all agree. Wherever we're off, we're open to you correcting us. Thank you, that we may live in Jesus' name. Take your communion emblems if you would. We're remembering. We're remembering. This whole thing's about love. We're remembering. Reveal it to us. Help us discover it and see it like we've never seen it before. In Jesus' name. Amen. You can just pass your cups to the end, or there'll be an usher at the door who will take them from you when you leave. Thank you for coming, spending this time with us. Have an awesome, blessed week. If you need prayer, someone will be at the front. Be glad to pray with you.